So Cora, as Zoe said, is an AIM-listed exploration business focused in Mali and Senegal. Cora came about through essentially the amalgamation of certain hummingbird permits with Cora Gold, which is already in existence. Cora Gold has got a world-class exploration team, which have made multiple discoveries which have gone on to become economic gold mines. The most recent of note really is the Mako mine, which was owned by Toro Gold, which recently sold to Resolute for $300 million. So that's a pretty good turnaround from an exploration success. I think you've got a huge land package across West Africa in amongst a large number of gold mines. You've got, as I said, the proven team. You've got an excellent share register who have been extremely supportive in these raises. All of the major shareholders followed their rights in the placement which closed today. And obviously SRK have put an exploration target limited to 100 meters of depth on our main project, Cora. So dipping into it a little bit more, we've got permits in two main belts. On the left of the map there is two permits in what's called the Kenieba window, arguably one of the most prolific and prospective areas in the whole of West Africa. As you can see, the permits are surrounded by extremely well-known and productive gold mines. To the right of your picture, you've got where our Cora project is, which is within the Yamfilila belt. Another very prolific gold belt. You've got significant deposits nearby, not least obviously Yamfilila Hummingbird's mine. You've also got Kabada, which is a big project, Kalana, which is owned by Endeavour Mining. So I guess all of our permits are in the midst of mines, which is the best place to be, frankly. Dipping into Cora, and just to talk a little bit more about that project and the reasons that we're excited about it and the reason that we're obviously been pushing forward with it. It's a huge gold discovery, 14 kilometers in length. I think to try and put 14 kilometers in perspective, the two Hummingbird pits, which are going to be delivering 130,000 ounces a year for the next 5 or so years, have a combined length of about 4 kilometers. So 14 kilometers of strike length, obviously 3 times that length or more, is significant, and that's why we're extremely excited. The next thing, obviously, is the exploration target limited to 100 meters of depth. If you look here, you've got sulfide mineralization to 170 meters. I'm not saying add 70% to SRK's target. All I'm saying is there is good prospectivity at significantly greater depths than SRK are currently estimating. And the other important factor is obviously the recovery of the gold. You can find a lot of gold, but you've got to be able to get it out. And the work we've been doing with Wardell Armstrong, who are a very well-renowned engineer consultancy firm, has shown you've got recoveries of up to 97%, which is excellent. And obviously, I realize I've just been talking about oxides and I haven't really explained it. So oxide material is essentially dirt, mud, free digging material, which you don't need to blast, you don't need to crush. You can dig it up and you can just put it in your process plant. So in principle, cheap to mine and cheap to process. Sulfide is essentially fresh rock. It's a hard rock. You've got to generally blast it. You've got to crush it. So it comes with a higher processing cost and a higher mining cost. So the excitement of the oxides is that it's cheap to mine, cheap to process. It's what people ideally want to find. In terms of news drivers, we've just raised some money, which will be going into further drilling, and we've been putting out some pretty exciting drill results, by my estimation anyway, over the last few months, and obviously that will be re-engaging those drill rigs. And secondly, we're looking to bring out a scoping study by the end of this year. This is essentially your first pass economics. I think for us, we're seeing it as essentially a proof of concept. I think it's all very well drilling and drilling and drilling, but at some point you need to know, is it economic? Is it going to be economic? And I think don't see the scoping study as the biggest or the best thing this mine could be. See the scoping study as a proof that there's a mine here, and we will continue to explore and continue to drill to make it bigger and better. But I think it's an important milestone to show that there's an economic potential of the project. Okay, so dipping in a bit further, obviously there's your 14 kilometer strike length. You've obviously got mineralization all along the permit area. You've got a deposit or a discovery called Salin in the north, and then obviously coming down Zone B and Zone A in the south. Looking at the drill holes, 46 meters at 4.5 grams a ton is what I would deem a company-making drill hole. It's a massive hole, and I think we put it out earlier this year, and it went largely unnoticed, to be fair. But I think what you're seeing is consistent levels of width and mineralization. I think that's important. I think you need both width because you need to mine a wide ore body because it'll become more economic, and you also need the grade because you obviously it means you can get more gold for less tons through your plant. So I think we're seeing width and grade, which is exciting for this stage of project. Down the bottom there, you've got some of the sulfide holes as well. So you can still see you've got this north of 3 gram a ton material and a width of close to 10 meters. So normally in mining terms, you build up your deposit into kind of 5-meter blocks. And ultimately, if you've got a 20-ton bucket on a digger, a 5-meter block is pretty much the level of accuracy you can mine to. So you really need zones of wider than 5 meters. It goes without saying. Otherwise, you're going to be bringing in a lot of waste into your ore zone and putting it in your plant, which will have the effect of reducing your grade. So you need to see widths of in my mind, certainly wider than 5 meters and ideally up to 20 meters. So then going further into Salin, which is obviously the northernmost discovery, what you see there in that cross section on the far right is obviously a really nice, consistently wide ore body. Just to explain dilution and the impact it can have on ore bodies. Ordinarily, a bucket will mine to about a 0.5 meter accuracy. So if you can imagine you've got a 10-meter wide ore zone, if you're mining to 0.5 meter accuracy either side of the ore zone, you're going to have 10% dilution, i.e. you're bringing in 10% waste to dilute your ore. Ultimately, if you have a 20-meter wide ore body, you're going to half that dilution because you're still going to have the 0.5 meter accuracy. So seeing nice wide ore bodies, which don't have any complication, they don't dip at a weird angle, you can just mine it straight down, means that you will be delivering more ore at a better grade for every bucket load, in simple terms. So whilst this is early stage and we're still in the exploration stage, I think there's lots to be excited about the style of mineralization and the way we're seeing these resources coming together. Stepping back, the other block of licenses in this Yanfolila belt, obviously Yanfolila is the Hummingbird mine. One of the big advantages for Hummingbird doing the deal with Cora, frankly, was Cora had this permit called Tekaladugu, which was, I don't mean this rudely, right in the armpit of our mining permit. It's literally 8 kilometers from the Hummingbird process plant, and as you can see, it's had some good drill hits there. I would caveat it's very early stage and it needs plenty more work doing on it, but it's obviously prospective. It's had gold discovered there. You've obviously got other permits round and about as well. So I think the hardest thing in the resource industry is finding a mineralized structure. And once you find one, then you know you're onto something. So I think the exciting thing here is obviously there's mineralization all around, and you've got a decent land package in a good postcode. So further work to be done, but plenty of upside on it. Yeah, so on the corporate side of things for Cora, I think it's got, in my mind, and I would say that obviously, an amazing share register for a company of this size. I don't think there are many junior companies who have got, obviously, some of the high quality of Hummingbird on the register, notwithstanding. But to break it down, Michael Farmer is the founder of Red Kite, which is a large commodity trading and mine finance business. So Red Kite finance mines, and they also trade commodities, and it's multi-billion dollars under management. Key Ventures and Brookstone business is essentially the Quirk family, and the Quirk family owned 20% of a business called Lionor, which sold for over $6 billion to Norilsk. And they've gone and they now have essentially invest, obviously, those profits in other resource businesses. They really like to invest in developing projects. So they put $10 million into Bushveld last year. They put $10 million into Salt Lake this year. So this investment really for the Quirk family is earlier stage than they would normally do. But for me, that's awesome because they like to invest in building mines. So if Cora has a fair wind and if everything comes together, you've got the farmers there who have a mine finance business, and you've got the Quirks there who like to do $10, $50 million tickets into building mines. So for me, standing here, it gives you a pretty strong position to stand from. So for me, on the share register, I think they've been following their rights. In the last fundraise, all of those shareholders followed their rights, which is obviously hopefully a positive indication for the company. Marley, I got asked a question on this earlier, which I probably answered off the cuff, probably not as well as I could have done, but Mali is a very well-proven mining jurisdiction. It's Africa's third largest gold-producing region. Within Mali itself, gold mining industry is the second largest industry, which is extremely important. I think when you've got a country which relies so heavily on one industry, they are extremely vested in it going well, and they understand the importance of it going well. And coupled with the fact that after 30 years, you've got a whole generation of very experienced engineers and geologists. So Cora, like Hummingbird, has a national staff. It doesn't really have any expats, which for you guys as hopefully new shareholders, you've got a lower operating cost as possible, and also you're fully engaged with the local country, and you need to hire locally and you need to employ locally to obviously get the buy-in for all stakeholders. So, and the other thing is infrastructure. The project's 4.5 hours drive from the capital city south. So, you're close-ish to the capital city, which is good, but you're not too close that you might have any issues with it. So I'd say infrastructure-wise, it's a good place. You're on a tarmac road most of the way, which is great. And you're within a few kilometers of a river, which is good for water, which you need for your mine in the future. So for me, that is all positives, really. So the investment case, look, it should be an easy one for me to sell. I've invested £35,000 in Cora this year. And before anyone asks, Hummingbird always took my non-exec director's fees. So I'm not just reinvesting money they paid me. But look, I think we've had a really exciting exploration campaign where we have had consistently good drill results. And I think we've just raised money with the help of Turner Pope, which has been great. And that will allow us to re-engage those drill rigs and hopefully continue along that vein at San and Cora. And obviously you've got the San and Cora growth potential as well as the delivery of a scoping study, which hopefully will put maiden economics around the project. As well as that, you've still got a regional exploration and wider exploration program with some really prospective permits. So hoping to get some holes into those other permits as well. So I think the ability to have, whether it's a virgin discovery or a big discovery hole on another permit is there as well. So for me, it's an exciting time for the company. It's sort of going from being a very junior explorer, hopefully, to growing a few more feet and legs and moving through to the next stage. So for me, I don't want to delay anyone any further. That is the key selling points for me, really, and why I'm excited about it. Thanks.
I'm sorry, I missed the supportive shareholder base. Could you just go over that again, please?
Yeah, so the largest shareholder is Hummingbird Resources with about 18%. Then you've got Michael Farmer, who's the founder of Red Kite. So Red Kite's a multi-billion-dollar commodity fund and mine finance house. So he obviously has a significant net worth on the scale of most institutions, to be frank about it. Then the third grouping, which was listed as Brookstone and Q Ventures, they're both trust companies of the Quirk family. And the Quirk family are a multi-generational African mining family who significantly owned 20% of Lionor, which sold for $6 billion to Norilsk a decade ago, and subsequently have been making significant investments. They owned 20% of Asanko at one stage, which was a $1 billion Ghanaian gold company. They put $10 million into Bushveld, $10 million into Salt Lake. So they're a very credible and very, they've been a very successful resource family. So there's the main shareholders, that sort of 4 or 5 guys, own over 75%. So essentially the free float, for want of a better word, I guess I would say, is 25% probably. I don't know, someone at Turner Pope might have the answer better for me, but I would say about not more than 25%. So I'd say it's a very tight register. All you've seen is the major shareholders follow their money. So there isn't a lot of, shares sort of floating around.
Yeah, I would say that Cora's probably got the most consistent success in exploration of any of the African juniors this year. But I'd just like to go a step further. Processing plants or mills.
Yeah.
How far are you away from the nearest processing plants or mills?
Yeah, I think it's a good question to ask, and I guess it's probably significant to a degree that Hummingbird followed its money in the last fundraise. Hummingbird is around 90 kilometers from San and Cora in a straight line, so call it maybe 120 kilometers by road. I think one aspect of the oxide deposit and one aspect from Hummingbird's perspective is Hummingbird has oxides for another 1 to 2 years, and then it will be a fresh rock mine, which obviously comes with a higher mining cost, and it comes with lowering throughput processing capacity, because ultimately you can't process as much ore through your mill. So that's factored into Hummingbird's production profile. You have ultimately towards the end of your mine life a lowering production profile as you move to consistently fresh rock. So I think one aspect for San and Cora, Hummingbird publicly 2 years ago tried to do a deal with the neighboring project called Kabada, where we believed as Hummingbird that you could build a small-scale processing plant that would basically create a high-grade, toll-treatable ore, and then you would truck it to Yanfadila. So I guess where you're leading with it is you've got oxides, can you beneficiate it to a high grade, and can you truck it to another mine, whether it's Yanfalila or another mine in 100 Ks? I mean, I wouldn't say it's necessarily the number one route at all, but I think there is proof of concept that people have done it in the past, and it could be a route to cash flow potentially.
If you were high grade, you'd build your own mill. But the other question is, Mali is seeing rather a lot of, shall we say, early stage M&A.
Yep.
And I just wonder, in terms of you're coming up with quite an important announcement in December, we could be seeing M&A activity underway by then, and your problem is that your float is so small it's very hard to deal in any significant quantity unless you're one of the three owners.
Yes, potentially. I mean, I think, look, there has been consolidation in the sector. We've all seen it, from Rangol Barrick at the top to more junior guys coming along. I think Cora's obviously got a very, strong register and very tight register. So I guess we couldn't have the assets stolen off us, for want of a better word, with someone coming in with a cheeky bid, because you've got guys who are invested not for a 20% gain. They're invested for, seeing a mine through to production and building a mine. So I guess with some companies, potentially you're at risk of a cheeky offer, 30% premium, and suddenly the independent non-execs go, oh, great, 30%. Whereas ultimately with Cora, you've got 70% of the register, are holding it with an extremely long-term view, seeing this thing into production. So don't know if that's answered your question, but I think potentially Cora is not in the same situation that others might be if they were at a position of weakness and someone came in with a cheeky offer or whatever.
Just a follow-up. You said earlier that it was $70 million investment during the IPO into Hummingbird to bring the mine to production. What would this number be for Cora, to bring Cora to production?
Yeah, so just to clarify that, the Hummingbird mine was a $90 million capex, but we had $70 million of equity to build it. I think on Cora, obviously, it's way too early to say. We haven't got a resource yet or a scoping study. And I think it's all to do with the size of your plant, and there's obviously a factoring. So Hummingbird built a 1.2 million ton a year mine plant, and it cost $90 million. Toro Gold, Mako, which sold to Resolute, built, I think, a 1.5 million ton a year mine, and it cost maybe $120 million. But then they have more fresh rock, less oxide, so you need more crushing, costs more money. So in principle, an oxide processing plant mine, you need no or significantly less crushing circuit, which obviously can be a big part of capex and also a bigger part of your operating costs because it needs a lot of power to run. But it's way too early to get there right now. I mean, we still need to bring out a maiden resource and bring out a scoping study. But in principle, an oxide mine is cheaper to build. But I can't really get led because you don't know how big the plant's going to be or exactly how it's going to be.
Thank you very much, Robert and Cora Gold.
Thanks.